He called it teamwork. I called it calculated theft. 9 months I'd spent crafting the strategy that would define our entire year. And in his 3-minute pitch to the board, I heard every word of mine coming from his mouth. He beamed, shaking hands with executives while I sat frozen in the corner. But less than a quarter later, I sat across from him in the main conference room as the new representative of his biggest client, $6.5 million, had just walked out of his hands, and I didn't even blink. My name is Lauren Blake, and for 3 years, I've been the ghostwriter of success stories at Stratison Marketing Group, 34 years old, senior strategist, and apparently invisible when the spotlight turns on. The Austin skyline gleamed through our 20th floor windows as I set up for another Tuesday morning brainstorming session. Coffee brewing, whiteboards cleaned, research packets printed and organized by relevance. This was my ritual. Arrive at 6:30 a.m. Prepare the war room before anyone else stumbled in with their breakfast tacos and excuses. Morning, Lauren. Ethan Corbin strolled in at 8:45, 15 minutes late as usual. 38, silver-tongued, with that practiced smile that made clients feel like they were the only account that mattered. He dropped into his chair, the one closest to the presentation screen, naturally, and pulled out his leather notebook. The same one where he'd take notes while I dissected market trends, consumer psychology, and competitive landscapes. Neurolex meeting is next week, I said, sliding the preliminary strategy deck across the table. I've identified 3 pivot points where we can differentiate their AI platform from CompeteCore's offering. He flipped through the pages, nodding thoughtfully. That was Ethan's superpower, looking engaged while contributing nothing. In our 18 months as project partners, I'd carried the intellectual weight while he carried the golf clubs. Brilliant stuff, he murmured, photographing each slide with his phone. Mind if I review these tonight? Want to make sure I'm fully aligned. I should have known. But collaboration was the Stratison way, plastered on every wall. One team, one dream. So I shared my Google Drive folder, like always, gave him access to the raw frameworks, the consumer insights I'd gathered through 60 hours of research, the positioning statements I'd refined through 7 iterations. The Neurolex opportunity was massive. $6.5 million over 3 years. The kind of account that turned senior strategists into partners. I'd been courting them quietly for a year, building relationships with their innovation team, understanding their technical complexities in ways our competitors couldn't match. You know what I love about working with you? Ethan leaned back, hands behind his head. You make everyone around you better. That's rare in this business. Empty flattery. I'd heard it before, usually right before he'd asked for just one more favor, or, could you look over his presentation? But I smiled anyway, because that's what team players do. The next 3 days blurred together. I lived in that conference room, surrounded by sticky notes mapping user journeys, competitor analyses, and revenue projections. Ethan popped in occasionally, asking surface-level questions, making suggestions that revealed he hadn't actually read the brief. Maybe we should mention blockchain, he offered Thursday afternoon. Neurolex specifically stated they want to distance from crypto associations, I replied, not looking up from my framework. Right, good catch. By Friday, I'd crafted something special. Not just a pitch, but a 3-year transformation roadmap that addressed Neurolex's unspoken fears about market positioning. It was the kind of strategy that makes CMOs lean forward and CFOs start calculating ROI before you've finished talking. Lauren, quick update. Our department head, Marcus, appeared in the doorway. Small change for the Neurolex pitch. Ethan will be taking the lead presenter role. You'll be there for support, of course. My fingers stilled on the keyboard. I'm sorry? Optics thing. The Neurolex board is a bit traditional. They respond better to, a certain presence. Ethan has that gravitas. You understand? I understood perfectly. 3 years of being the brain while others were the face. 3 years of, you're so valuable behind the scenes, and your strategic mind is our secret weapon. Of course, I said, voice steady. Whatever's best for the client. Marcus left, and Ethan avoided my eyes, suddenly fascinated by his phone. The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we both knew but wouldn't say. That weekend, I watched our shared folder. Saw him accessing files at 2 a.m., downloading my templates, copying entire sections into new documents with his name in the header. I should have revoked access, should have raised concerns, but I didn't. Because somewhere in my freelance past, hustling for every client, fighting for every opportunity, I'd learned that the long game beats the loud voice, every time. Monday morning came too fast. I dressed carefully, my best blazer, the one that made me feel like I owned the room even when I was relegated to the corner. The Neurolex team would arrive at 10. At 9:45, Ethan pulled me aside. Hey, actually, Marcus thinks it might be too crowded with both of us in there. Would you mind monitoring from the observation room? You know, in case they have technical questions I can't handle. The observation room, where interns watched senior staff work, learning by osmosis through one-way glass. Whatever's best for the client, I repeated, the words ash in my mouth. At 10 a.m. sharp, I stood behind that glass, watching Ethan present my work to 6 executives who controlled a $6.5 million decision. He was good, I had to admit. Smooth delivery, confident gestures, perfect timing on the pause before revealing each transformative insight. My insights, delivered like he'd discovered them himself. Not once did he stumble. Not once did he look toward the observation room. Not once did he mention the strategist who'd built this house of cards he was now dealing from. I wasn't just invisible, I was erased. The applause started before Ethan even clicked to the final slide. Through the one-way glass, I watched the Neurolex executives lean forward, nodding with that particular energy that signals a deal about to close. My strategy, every insight, every framework, every carefully crafted metaphor, flowed from Ethan's mouth like water he'd drawn from his own well. The neural pathway approach to brand architecture, he said, gesturing to my diagram, came to me during a run last week. Sometimes the best ideas arrive when you're not trying. My hands clenched against the observation room table. That diagram had taken me 3 days to perfect, built after interviewing 15 AI engineers to understand how they conceptualized their work. But there was Ethan, claiming divine inspiration between miles 4 and 5 of his morning jog. Brilliant work, Corbin, said Miles Torrance, Neurolex's VP of Strategic Development. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. I live for this stuff, Ethan replied, that practiced humility coating his voice. When you truly understand a client's DNA, the strategy writes itself. The strategy writes itself. I almost laughed at the audacity. Every word on those slides had been agonized over, researched, tested, refined. Nothing wrote itself except Ethan's name on work he didn't do. The meeting wrapped with handshakes and promises to move forward aggressively. Marcus beamed like a proud father. The Neurolex team invited Ethan to lunch at Franklin Barbecue, the Austin equivalent of a blood oath in business dealings. Lauren, you can head back to your desk, Marcus said through the intercom. Great support work on this. Support work? I gathered my laptop and notebook, maintaining the pleasant expression that had become my armor. In the elevator, I pulled up our shared Google Drive on my phone. The access logs told the story in timestamps. Ethan had downloaded every file at 2:17 a.m. Saturday, 5:43 a.m. Sunday, and again at 7:22 a.m. this morning. He'd even accessed my personal folder, the one with draft strategies I'd never shared, competitive analyses I'd compiled on my own time. Back at my desk, an email waited. Team, please join me in congratulating Ethan Corbin on his exceptional presentation to Neurolex. This is the kind of strategic leadership that sets Stratosyn apart. Lunch is on me today to celebrate. My colleagues rushed to reply, all with congratulations and emoji-filled praise. I closed my laptop and walked to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and let myself feel the rage for exactly 90 seconds. Then I washed my face, reapplied lipstick, and made a decision. If Ethan thought he'd stolen just a presentation, he'd miscalculated. He'd stolen from someone who'd spent 10 years as a freelancer, surviving on wit and preparation. Someone who'd learned to document everything, trust no one, and always, always keep receipts. I returned to my desk and began my real work. First, I exported every email exchange between Ethan and me about the Neurolex account. 7 months of messages where I'd outlined strategies and he'd responded with, "Sounds good," or "Run with it." Then I pulled my time tracking logs, a habit from freelance days I'd never broken. They showed 186 hours on Neurolex strategy development. Ethan's, 12 hours, mostly in meetings where I'd presented and he'd nodded. Next came the Slack conversations. Beautiful. Time-stamped evidence of me sharing ideas, documents, insights. His responses were perfect in their simplicity. "Thanks. We'll review. You're the best." Not one original thought, not one strategic contribution. But the crown jewel was something Ethan didn't know existed. My draft presentation from a year ago, before Neurolex was even on Stratosyn's radar. I'd been cultivating them independently. We'd exchanged emails about their challenges, their vision, their fears about market positioning. I'd sent Miles Torrance a preliminary strategic framework, watermarked with my personal email, dated 13 months ago. The same framework that had just won Ethan a standing ovation. I created a new folder. Insurance. Everything went in. Emails, logs, drafts, screenshots. Then I did something I'd never done in 3 years at Stratosyn. I took a long lunch at a coffee shop on South Congress. I called Sylvia Moreno. We'd worked together at a boutique firm before I joined Stratosyn. She now ran strategy for Cognitive Solutions, Neurolex's primary competitor. "Lauren Blake," she answered on the first ring. "Tell me you're finally ready to leave that boys' club." "Not exactly," I said, "but I need a favor. Remember when I helped you land the Helix account? I owe you my career for that. What do you need?" "Information. Specifically, how well do you know Miles Torrance at Neurolex?" Sylvia laughed. "Small world. We're having drinks tomorrow to discuss their Q4 expansion." "Why?" I stirred my coffee, choosing my words carefully. "Let's just say there might be an opportunity for both of us. Can you mention that you heard Stratosyn's presenting interesting ideas, but you're curious who's really behind them? Lauren, what are you planning?" "Nothing unethical, just making sure credit goes where it's due." We talked for 20 more minutes. Sylvia shared that Neurolex was notoriously thorough about vetting their partners. They despised dishonesty above all else, a core value stemming from their CEO's experience being betrayed by a co-founder. Perfect. I returned to the office to find Ethan's desk decorated with congratulations cards. He was still at lunch, probably ordering the most expensive bourbon Franklin offered. His computer sat unlocked, a security violation he constantly committed despite IT's warnings. I didn't touch it, didn't need to. The urge for petty revenge was strong, but I was playing a longer game. Instead, I sent a single email to my personal account, a forward of my original correspondence with Miles Torrance from 13 months ago, with a brief note, "For my records." That evening, as the office celebrated Ethan's win, I stayed late, not to work, to remember. This feeling of being erased, of watching someone else wear my intelligence like a costume. It was fuel. Ethan stopped by my desk on his way out, bourbon on his breath. "Hey, thanks for all your hard work on this. Couldn't have done it without you." "You're right," I said, meeting his eyes. "You couldn't have." He laughed, missing the edge in my voice. "Team player to the end. That's why you're the best." "Lauren." I smiled, the kind that didn't reach my eyes. "Ethan, enjoy tonight. You earned it." He strutted away, translating my words as surrender. But I wasn't surrendering. I was declaring war. He just didn't know it yet. The rage had crystallized into something more useful. Cold, methodical planning. For the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost in my own office, present but invisible, watching Ethan bask in his stolen glory while I built my case. Every morning, I arrived early to document, Screenshot after screenshot of file access logs showing Ethan downloading my work. Email threads where I'd proposed strategies and he'd contributed nothing but acknowledgement. Meeting recordings. Stratison recorded everything for quality assurance, where my voice outlined every element of the Neuralex approach while Ethan asked what time lunch was ordered. But documentation wasn't enough. I needed to understand the full scope of his deception. I started with casual conversations. Hey, Ethan, I'm working on the analytics framework for Phase 2. Want to sync up on your vision? His eyes would dart, fingers drumming on his desk. Actually, I'm slammed today. Why don't you run with your ideas and we'll circle back? Always the same pattern. Take credit for the pitch, avoid responsibility for the work. Then came the discoveries that turned my suspicion into certainty. Late one evening, I accessed the shared drive's detailed logs, a feature most people ignored. Ethan hadn't just stolen the Neuralex presentation. Over the past 18 months, he'd systematically downloaded every strategy I'd created, every framework I'd developed. The Patterson account win last year, my social media strategy, the Meridian rebrand that earned him a bonus, my consumer psychology insights. I'd been feeding his career while mine starved in the shadows. The breaking point came during a team meeting 3 weeks after the Neuralex pitch. Marcus announced that Ethan would be leading the account execution, with me as strategic support. Ethan's vision for this client is exactly what we need, Marcus said. Lauren, you'll make sure his ideas are properly documented. His ideas. I felt the words like ice in my veins. That night, I made my move. From my personal laptop, I drafted an email to Miles Torrance, not accusatory, not emotional, just professional. Mr. Torrance, I hope this finds you well. I wanted to follow up on our preliminary discussions from last year regarding Neuralex's positioning challenges. I'm thrilled to see the company moving forward with the strategic framework we explored. If you need any clarification on the neural pathway approach or the implementation roadmap, I'm happy to discuss the thinking behind these concepts. Best regards, Lauren Blake. I attached our original email thread from 13 months ago, complete with my early framework sketches, the same ones Ethan had presented as his morning jog inspiration. Then I waited. The response came at 6 a.m. the next day. Ms. Blake, I'm confused. Ethan Corbin presented this strategy as his original work. Can we speak privately? Miles. We scheduled a call for that afternoon. I took it from my car, parked in the garage where no one would overhear. I don't appreciate being misled, Miles said without preamble. Explain. So I did. Calmly. Factually. Without editorializing, I shared the timeline, the documentation, the pattern of behavior. Miles listened in silence until I finished. Do you have proof beyond these emails? Extensive documentation, time logs, file access records, meeting recordings where I presented every element Mr. Corbin later claimed as his own. Send me everything. I did. 63 files compressed into a folder titled Strategic Development Timeline. Then I added one more thing, a new deck. Not out of spite, but out of pride. If Miles was going to see my work, he'd see what I could really do when I wasn't holding back. This deck went beyond the original strategy. I'd spend 3 sleepless nights crafting an execution plan that addressed challenges Ethan couldn't even perceive. Competitive countermoves, talent acquisition strategies, regulatory navigation. The deep work that separated good strategies from transformative ones. This is what happens, I wrote, when the real strategist isn't kept in the observation room. Miles called back 2 days later. We have a problem, Ms. Blake. Neuralex doesn't work with dishonest partners, but we've already signed initial agreements with Stratison. My heart sank. Of course, contracts trumped ethics. However, he continued, those agreements specify key personnel. If that personnel were to change their circumstances, we'd need to reassess. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting nothing. I'm simply stating that Neuralex values authenticity and strategic brilliance. We also have no restrictions on working with independent consultants in addition to our agency partners. The implication was clear, but I needed more than implications. Mr. Torrance, hypothetically, if a strategist were to establish an independent practice, would Neurolex consider engaging them directly? Hypothetically, we'd consider it essential. That evening, I did 3 things. First, I incorporated Blake's Strategic Works, LLC. Second, I drafted a resignation letter for Stratocin, effective in 30 days. Third, I sent Ethan a message on Slack. Congratulations again on the Neurolex win. I'm sure you'll do great things with the account. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and, thanks, teamwork makes the dream work. I smiled at my phone. Yes, Ethan, it certainly does. And you're about to learn what happens when you work alone. The investigation phase was complete. Every document collected, every proof point secured, every alternative established. Ethan thought he'd stolen a strategy. He'd actually stolen from someone who'd spent years learning that in business, like in chess, the best revenge isn't emotional, it's strategic. And I was about to demonstrate the difference between presenting someone else's ideas and actually having them. The call came on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks into my notice period at Stratocin. I was in the middle of training my replacement, a bright kid named David who actually took notes, when my personal phone buzzed. Miles Torrance. Lauren, we need to meet, today if possible. Can you make it to the Four Seasons downtown at 2 p.m.? I glanced at Ethan's empty desk. He was at another celebratory lunch, this time with Neurolex's technical team. I'll be there. Come alone. This conversation doesn't exist. At 2 p.m. sharp, I found Miles in a private dining room, accompanied by 2 other executives I recognized from the pitch meeting, Samantha Liu, Chief Innovation Officer, and Derek Morrison, Head of Strategic Partnerships, the power trio that controlled Neurolex's vendor relationships. Thank you for coming, Miles said, gesturing to a chair. We have a situation. Samantha slid a tablet across the table. On it was Ethan's latest strategic update, a confused mess of buzzwords and recycled ideas that clearly showed he had no grasp of the original strategy's nuances. This was submitted yesterday as our Q4 roadmap, Derek said. It's concerning. I scanned the document, professional mask firmly in place. Inside, though, I felt a savage satisfaction. Without my brain to pick, Ethan had produced exactly what I'd expected, surface-level garbage dressed in corporate speak. What specifically concerns you? I asked. Everything, Samantha said bluntly. The neural pathway framework he presented brilliantly. Now he can't explain why we chose it over traditional architectures. The competitive moats he identified, his follow-up suggests strategies that would actually strengthen our competitors. Miles leaned forward. We've done our homework, Lauren. We know who really built that strategy. We also know you're leaving Stratocin in 8 days. My resignation is public knowledge. What isn't public knowledge? Derek interjected. Is that we're about to invoke Clause 12.3 in our contract with Stratocin. I knew that clause. I'd helped draft Stratocin's standard contracts. It allowed clients to request specific personnel changes if deliverables didn't meet expectations. You're removing Ethan from the account. We're doing more than that, Miles said. We're questioning whether Stratocin can handle our needs at all. Unless... The pause stretched. I waited, having learned long ago that silence was often the best negotiator. We want you to present the full strategic implementation plan, the real one, not whatever Ethan's been fumbling with. Present it to our entire board, CEO included, show us what we're actually buying. I'm still employed by Stratocin. That would be ethical. Samantha smiled. More ethical than letting us invest $6.5 million based on stolen work. We're not asking you to breach your contract. Present as a Stratocin employee, but present your work. I considered the angles. When? Tomorrow, 3 p.m., our headquarters. 24 hours to prepare the most important presentation of my career. I'll need full access to Neurolex's competitive intelligence, your technical specifications, and your 5-year product pipeline. Done, Miles said, sliding a secure access badge across the table. This gets you into our systems. Whatever you need. That night, I didn't sleep. I built something magnificent, not out of vengeance, but out of pure creative fury. Every slide was a masterpiece of strategic thinking, backed by data Ethan didn't even know existed. I incorporated Neurolex's confidential product roadmap, identifying synergies that would save them millions. I mapped competitive responses and counter strategies 5 moves deep, but the masterpiece was the implementation timeline. I'd identified 47 specific actions across 6 departments, each tied to measurable outcomes. It was the kind of detailed brilliance that separated strategists from PowerPoint jockeys. At 11 p.m., my phone rang. Ethan. Hey, Lauren, quick question. Miles mentioned something about neural pathway intersections with their product architecture. What did we mean by that? I almost laughed. Check section 3.2 of the original deck, I said. It's all there. I did, but I don't really. Can you just explain it quickly? Sorry, Ethan. I'm actually working on something. I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're the lead strategist, after all. The silence on his end was delicious. Right. Yeah. Of course. The next afternoon, I walked into Neurolex's boardroom wearing my sharpest suit and carrying nothing but a laptop and supreme confidence. The entire C-suite was present, including CEO Patricia Holbrook, a woman known for eating unprepared vendors alive. Ms. Blake, Patricia said, eyes sharp. We're told you have something to show us. You have 1 hour. I opened my laptop, connected to their system, and began. 14 months ago, I identified Neurolex as a sleeping giant. Your technology is superior, but your market position is vulnerable. Today, I'm going to show you not just how to defend that position, but how to make it unassailable. For the next 53 minutes, I took them on a journey, not through Ethan's regurgitated slides, but through a living strategy that breathed and evolved with each question they asked. When the CFO challenged my cost projections, I pulled up real-time models showing 3 scenarios. When the CTO doubted the technical integration timeline, I mapped the dependencies I'd researched with their own engineers. This isn't just strategy, I said, reaching my crescendo. This is transformation engineered at the molecular level of your business. And unlike Mr. Corbin, I can explain every atom of it. The room was silent when I finished. Patricia looked at her executives, then at me. Who are you, exactly? Miles cleared his throat. She's the actual strategist behind the work we liked. She's also leaving Stratison next week. No, Patricia said. She's not leaving. She's being liberated. Ms. Blake, what would it take to have you, specifically you, lead our strategic transformation? I thought of Ethan, probably panic Googling neural pathways right now. Of Marcus, who'd kept me in observation rooms. Of 3 years of being the invisible engine of other people's success. I've recently established Blake's strategic works, I said. We could discuss an exclusive engagement. Discuss it now, Patricia commanded. Miles, get legal on the phone. I want options. As they huddled around the conference phone with their legal team, I stepped onto the balcony. Austin spread below me, all possibility and promise. My phone buzzed with texts from Ethan, increasingly frantic questions about the strategy. I deleted them unread. He wanted to steal my work. He could have what he took, the empty shell of it. But the mind that created it, the vision that powered it, the future it could build, that was mine. And I was about to show everyone exactly what that was worth. The champagne was already flowing when I arrived at Stratison Monday morning. Ethan had orchestrated a full production, catered breakfast, congratulations banner, even a cake shaped like the Neurolex logo. The entire agency gathered in the main conference room. Marcus, leading the toast. To Ethan Corbin, strategic visionary and the man who landed our biggest client in 5 years. I stood in the back, sipping orange juice, counting down. 3 days remained in my notice period. 3 days until Blake Strategic Works officially launched. 3 days until the email would arrive. Speech! Speech! Someone called out. Ethan took the microphone with practiced humility. This win belongs to all of us. Stratocin is about collaboration, about bringing our best to every client. Neurolex saw that spirit and... The conference room door burst open. Marcus's assistant, pale-faced, phone in hand. Mr. Webb? You need to see this. Marcus frowned, but took the phone. I watched his expression shift from annoyance to confusion to shock. His champagne glass lowered slowly. Everyone back to work, he said quietly. Then, louder. Now! The party dissolved in confused whispers. Ethan stood frozen, still holding the microphone. Marcus beckoned him with one finger, the universal gesture of impending doom. I returned to my desk and waited. 7 minutes later, my email pinged. From Patricia Holbrook, CEO, Neurolex Technologies. To Marcus Webb, President, Stratocin Marketing Group, CC, Full Neurolex Board, Stratocin Executive Team, RE. Immediate restructuring of strategic partnership, Mr. Webb. Following careful consideration and Friday's illuminating presentation by Ms. Lauren Blake, Neurolex has decided to restructure our engagement with Stratocin, effective immediately. We are invoking Clause 12.3 of our contract. Mr. Ethan Corbin is to be removed from our account. His demonstrated inability to articulate or advance the strategic framework he presented raises serious concerns about intellectual ownership and competency. Furthermore, Neurolex will be engaging Blake Strategic Works as our lead strategic consultant, with Stratocin serving in a supporting capacity for execution only. All strategic decisions will flow through Ms. Blake, who has proven herself to be the true architect of our transformation plan. This restructuring reflects our core values of authenticity and excellence. We expect Stratocin to facilitate a smooth transition. Patricia Holbrook, Chief Executive Officer, Neurolex Technologies. The fallout was immediate. Through the glass walls of Marcus's office, I could see Ethan gesticulating wildly, face red, papers flying. Marcus sat stone-faced, occasionally glancing toward my desk. My phone buzzed. A text from Sylvia. Heard the news. Drinks tonight to celebrate your liberation? Then another. From Miles. PR wants to know if you're available for a joint press release about the innovative partnership structure. Also, legal approved your rate. Welcome to the family. By lunch, the entire office knew. Whispers followed me down hallways. Conversations stopped when I entered the break room. Some colleagues looked at me with newfound respect. Others, particularly Ethan's golf buddies, with barely concealed hostility. I was refilling my coffee when Ethan cornered me by the machine. You backstabbing bitch, he hissed, checking over his shoulder. I made you. Every opportunity you got was because I brought you onto my projects. I stirred my coffee calmly. Your projects? Name one original idea you contributed to any of them. I presented. You performed. There's a difference. I met his eyes. You want to know the ironic part, Ethan? If you'd given me even a sliver of credit, just once, we'd still be a team. But you got greedy. This is corporate sabotage. I'll sue. With what evidence? The files you downloaded from my personal folders, the strategies you claimed to invent during jogs, the presentation you delivered word for word from my deck? I smiled. I have timestamps on everything, including some very interesting access logs from 2 a.m. His face cycled through emotions, rage, fear, desperation. Lauren, come on, we can work this out. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I'll make sure you get co-credit going forward. There is no going forward. I set down my mug. You're off the account. I'm running it independently. And Stratocin? I glanced around the office I'd called home for 3 years. They're lucky Patricia didn't pull the entire contract. That afternoon, HR scheduled my exit interview. The head of human resources looked uncomfortable as she ran through standard questions. Any particular reason for leaving? Better opportunity. Would you recommend Stratison as an employer? To the right person. Any concerns you'd like documented? I considered it. The truth would implicate not just Ethan, but the entire culture that enabled him. Marcus, who assumed male voices carried more weight. The senior partners who celebrated presentations over substance. The system that kept producers in the shadows while performers took the spotlight. Just one, I said finally. You might want to audit who's actually creating the work versus who's presenting it. The gap might surprise you. She made a note, clearly eager to end the conversation. That evening, as I packed my desk, colleagues stopped by with mixed messages. Some offered genuine congratulations. Others fishing for details about what really happened. David, my replacement, looked terrified. Any advice? He asked. Document everything, timestamp your ideas, and never, ever give anyone access to your personal folders. I handed him a flash drive. Backup templates for every strategy framework. Guard them. At 6 p.m., I walked out of Stratison for the last time, carrying a small box of personal items. In the parking lot, Ethan's Porsche sat in its usual spot, vanity plate reading Strat G1. Through the lobby windows, I could see him still in Marcus's office, shoulders slumped, the fight drained out of him. 3 hours later, at a wine bar in South Austin. I raised a glass with Sylvia. To strategic revenge, she toasted. To intellectual property, I countered. We clinked glasses as my phone lit up with messages. Contract details from Neurolex, interview requests from industry publications, a LinkedIn notification showing 57 new connection requests. But the sweetest message was the shortest. From Patricia Holbrook. Loved the press release draft. One note, make sure your name appears before Stratison's every time. Ethan had his champagne breakfast, his moment of stolen glory, his name on a cake. I had the client. The conference room at Stratison had never felt smaller. 2 weeks after the Neurolex announcement, Ethan had requested a meeting through official channels. His lawyer CC'd on the email. I'd agreed, but only with witnesses present. My attorney, Sarah Chen, and a court reporter I'd hired to transcribe every word. Ethan entered like a deflated version of his former self. The swagger was gone, replaced by something between desperation and fury. He sat across from me, the same table where we'd planned strategies for 18 months. Let's make this quick, he started, attempting his old authoritative tone. I want to discuss a transition plan that works for both of us. There is no us, I said. What do you want, Ethan? He glanced at his lawyer, then back at me. You've made your point, I get it. But destroying my career? That's excessive. I didn't destroy anything. I simply told the truth. The truth? His composure cracked. You went behind my back, contacted my client. My client, I interrupted. My strategy. My relationship that predated your involvement by a full year. Would you like me to pull up the emails? His lawyer placed a hand on Ethan's arm, warning him to calm down. Ms. Blake, my client is prepared to acknowledge your contributions to the Neurolex account in exchange for a joint statement that frames this transition as mutual. Sarah leaned forward. Your client wants my client to lie to save his reputation? It's not lying, Ethan insisted. It's professional courtesy. Lauren, we worked together for 18 months. Doesn't that count for something? I opened my laptop, pulled up a file. Let's review what those 18 months looked like, shall we? The screen showed a comprehensive breakdown. Hours worked, strategies developed, presentations created. My column was filled with hundreds of entries. Ethan's showed mainly meeting attendance and client dinners. This is what I'm taking to Patricia if you pursue any legal action, I continued. Along with the access logs showing you downloading my files at 2 a.m., the Slack messages where you admitted you didn't understand the strategies, the email where you asked me to explain your ideas because you couldn't answer the client's questions. Ethan's face flushed. Those were private communications. On company servers, perfectly legal to retain and share. I closed the laptop. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to accept your removal from the Neurolex account gracefully. You're going to stop telling people I sabotaged you. And you're going to learn to create your own work. Or what? Or I share the full documentation package with every client you've ever presented to. How many of those wins were actually yours? Ethan? The silence stretched. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Finally, Ethan stood. You're right, I took credit for your work. I see that now. It wasn't an apology, just a tactical retreat, but I'd take it. One more thing, I said as he reached the door. That neural pathway framework you couldn't explain. It's based on mycelial network patterns in forest ecosystems, the interconnected dependencies, the nutrient sharing, the way stronger organisms support weaker ones for mutual benefit. It's actually beautiful when you understand it. He paused, hand on the doorknob. Why are you telling me this? Because you spent 18 months selling something you never bothered to understand. The metaphor was right there. How healthy systems work through genuine collaboration, not parasitism. I gathered my papers. Think about that next time you're tempted to steal someone's work. After they left, Sarah shook her head. You could have destroyed him completely. Why hold back? Because destruction wasn't the goal. Justice was. I checked my phone. 3 messages from Patricia about next week's board presentation. Besides, I have real work to do. That evening, I met Miles at Neurolex's office to finalize the implementation timeline. As we walked through their innovation lab, he brought up the elephant in the room. The industry's talking, some say you were ruthless. And I say it's about time someone stood up to the Ethan Corbins of the world. He paused by a whiteboard covered in equations. Patricia wanted me to tell you something. That presentation you gave? She's shown it to 3 other CEOs. You might want to scale up Blake's strategic work sooner than planned. I smiled, thinking of Ethan's Porsche with its Strat G1 plate. He'd wanted to be number 1 so badly he'd forgotten to actually be good at anything. Let them know I'm taking meetings, I said. But Neurolex gets priority. I don't abandon partners who value authenticity. Miles nodded approvingly. That's why we chose you. Well, that and the fact that you actually know what neural pathway frameworks mean. As I left the building, my phone buzzed. An unknown number, but I recognized the area code, Stratosyn's neighborhood. Lauren, it's David, your replacement? I just wanted to say, Ethan tried to pull the same thing with my work today, wanted me to share my research for team building. But I remembered what you said, documented everything, kept my folders locked. His voice carried a mix of nervousness and pride. He backed off when I mentioned timestamps. Good for you, I said, genuinely pleased. Don't let anyone dim your light to make theirs seem brighter. Is it true you took the whole Neurolex account with you? I didn't take anything. I just refused to let someone else take what was mine. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a moment, looking up at Stratosyn's lit windows. Somewhere up there, Ethan was probably scrambling to salvage his reputation, maybe even trying to claim credit for someone else's work, but not mine. Never again mine. The phone rang. Patricia Holbrook. Lauren, quick question. This implementation timeline, can we accelerate Phase 3 by 2 months? I want to hit the market before Compete Core realizes what we're doing. Already mapped 3 scenarios for acceleration, I replied, pulling up the files on my tablet. Each with risk assessments and resource requirements. Which would you like to review first? She laughed. This is what competence looks like. I'd almost forgotten. Send them all. And Lauren, that former colleague of yours is calling around, trying to get freelance strategy work. Just thought you should know several firms have already called me for references. What did you tell them? The truth. That Ethan Corbin is excellent at presenting other people's ideas. After she hung up, I started my car, leaving Stratosyn's shadow for the last time. Ethan wanted to be seen as a strategic genius. I just wanted to be one. The difference, as it turned out, made all the difference. The Austin skyline looked different from my new office, a corner suite in a building 3 blocks from Stratosyn. 6 months had passed since the Neurolex exodus. Blake Strategic Works now employed 12 strategists, all refugees from agencies where their brilliance had been dimmed by lesser lights. My assistant knocked. "Lauren, Ethan Corbin is here for his 3 p.m. I'd been expecting this. After 6 months of failed freelance attempts, his reputation in tatters, Ethan had finally swallowed enough pride to request a meeting. I agreed, but on my terms, in my space. He entered looking diminished. The designer suits replaced by off-the-rack. The Porsche probably sold. But what struck me most was the defeat in his eyes. He'd learned what happened when the performance ended and substance was required. "Thank you for seeing me," he started, actually meaning it. "You have 15 minutes. He nodded, pulling out a folder. "I know you have no reason to help me, but I need work, Lauren, real work, and—" He struggled with the words. "I need to learn how to actually do it." "Why would I trust you?" "Because I have nothing left to steal." The honesty was raw. Stratison fired me 3 months ago. Marcus couldn't protect me after 2 more clients complained I couldn't explain my strategies. My reputation is destroyed. But you know what the worst part is? I waited. Sitting in meetings, having ideas pitched at me, and realizing I don't understand any of them. 18 months I sold your brilliance, and I never bothered to learn how you created it. He met my eyes. "I'm not asking for a job. I'm asking to learn. Intern, assistant, whatever you'll allow. I'll sign any NDA you want, give you full oversight of my work. I need to become real." The irony was perfect. The man who'd stolen my strategies was asking to be my student. 6 months ago, I would have laughed him out of the office. But something Patricia had said stuck with me. The best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's transforming them into monuments to your success. "One condition," I said. "Everything you learn, everything you create under my guidance, you teach to someone else. Someone whose light is being dimmed. Break the cycle." His eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. We have a junior strategist program starting next month. You'll mentor 3 newcomers while learning yourself. Think of it as strategic karma." For the first time in our entire history, Ethan's smile seemed genuine. "I accept." My assistant appeared. "Lauren? Patricia Holbrook on line 1. Something about a Fortune 500 partnership?" "Tell her I'll call back in 5. I turned to Ethan. "Report Monday, 7 a.m. You'll shadow Maychen. She's brilliant at neural frameworks. And Ethan, the first time you take credit for someone else's work, you're gone." "Understood." He stood, then hesitated. "Lauren, the $6.5 million contract is now worth $11 million. I interrupted. "Turns out when you deliver what you promise, clients invest more." After he left, I walked to my window. Stratison's building gleamed in the distance, a monument to the old way, where performers mattered more than producers, where shadows hid the real talent. My phone buzzed. David, my former replacement, now running his own boutique firm. "Just landed the Meridian account, used your framework template. Full credit to Blake Strategic Works in my pitch. Thank you for showing me the way." I smiled, thinking about cycles. Ethan had stolen from me, creating a chain of events that liberated not just my career, but my purpose. Now he'd learn what I'd always known. That real strategy isn't about taking credit, it's about creating value so undeniable that credit becomes irrelevant. The final email of the day waited in my inbox. I'd been expecting this one too. From Ethan Corbin to Lauren Blake. Subject: For your records. Attachment: Neurolex Original. Strategy. Attribution: PDF. Lauren, attached is a formal document acknowledging your sole authorship of the Neurolex strategy. I've sent copies to Patricia Holbrook, Marcus Webb, and posted it on my LinkedIn. It's 60 pages detailing every idea I claimed, with correct attribution and timestamps. I know it doesn't undo what I did, but it's a start. Thank you for giving me a chance to become someone worth the title I once stole. Ethan P. As you were right about the mycelial networks. I finally read the research. It's actually beautiful when you understand it. I closed my laptop and gathered my things. Tonight, Neurolex was hosting a celebration for Phase 1's successful completion 2 months ahead of schedule, $3 million under budget. Patricia had insisted I give the keynote. But first, I had one more task. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a simple PDF, my original strategy draft, with timestamps and my name prominently displayed. The document that had changed everything. With a few clicks, I forwarded it to Ethan with a 2-word message. Study this. Because in the end, that's what real revenge looked like. Not destruction, but transformation. Not stealing back, but building something so much bigger that the original theft became a footnote in a success story. He'd taken my strategy and watched me take his $6.5 million client. But I'd done something far more devastating. I'd made him face who he really was, then offered him the chance to become someone better. The elevator carried me down to the parking garage where my new Tesla waited, a small indulgence after the Neurolex bonus. As I drove toward the celebration, Austin's lights blinking like neural pathways in the dusk, I thought about patterns, how systems really work, how sometimes the best strategies are the ones that transform enemies into case studies, theft into opportunity, shadows into spotlights. My phone rang. Another Fortune 500 CEO, referred by Patricia. I smiled and let it go to voicemail. Tonight was for celebrating. Tomorrow, I'd continue building an empire on the foundation of a simple truth. You can steal someone's work, but you can't steal their mind. And in the strategy game, the mind always wins. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of strategic revenge, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Lauren's position? Let me know in the comments.